1601, March 6, 2026. Right now marks 2,149 hours of progress on the global horror simulation. Currently, a script has been created that can calculate the world space bounds for any object in the scene with a collider, even without having to access a renderer or mesh filter component on the object. So as an example, some of the objects in the scene have colliders, but the renderer for the object is on a separate game object. And so as an example, this dome and many other objects are broken up into multiple objects where the collider is on one object and the render is on another, but the script is still able to find those objects with colliders and then calculate their world space without needing information about the renderer or the mesh filter. And it also works on objects that don't use a mesh collider, such as objects that use primitive collider shapes such as box or sphere, and also works if that object has multiple different colliders on one object. And so, as a demonstration of how that works, a simplest scene here. So basically it creates bounds around every object, and in the case of an object that has multiple primitive shapes colliders on it, it calculates those bounds and takes that into account. And in the case of an object that has a mesh collider and a primitive collider, it also takes those into account and resizes the box around that. And so the intention for the next hour is to voxelize the more complex scene, as previously the system only worked on primitive mesh types, but now that it can handle more complex collider setups, the intention for the next hour is to voxelize the individual objects on this scene and represent that visually.